I'll just text it to you.
All right, great. Thank you.
Well, it's gotten very quiet in here, so I guess it must be time to get started. Let's go ahead and call the Johnson City Council meeting number 24-14 to order. Cindy, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cope.
Here.
Evans. Martin.
Here.
Burkhart.
Here.
Ready.
I want to welcome everyone that is in the audience this evening. If you are here for an item that is on the agenda, we would ask for you to wait for that item to come up and address the council at that time. If you're here for an item that is not on the agenda, there will be an opportunity under public communications to address the council. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and we've got some youngsters in the audience tonight. So can we ask them to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Before you step away, I have you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody here. Let's turn around and talk to you are.
I'm Glenn. I'm Vincent.
You have a last name?
Brandon.
And who are you here with?
My dad,
And who's your dad?
Zachary.
He's one of our very fine police officers. Good. Well, thank you very much. You did a great job. Next item on the agenda is the agenda approval. Do we have any changes to the agenda, Mike?
Not this evening, Mayor.
Council, any changes? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Cope.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to public communications. We have one scheduled public communication this evening, and that is to administer the oaths of office to 3 Johnson police officers.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We've got a special night tonight. We're going to swear the oaths of 3 officers, 2 of which you may recognize depending upon how long you've been on the council. We've got some great folks coming back to the ranks to join us again in our efforts. So I'm going to start with one of those officers, Officer John Alexander. If you could step forward, please. Give you a little bit of background on Officer Alexander. He's originally from Ankeny, Iowa, and started his law enforcement career with the Polk County Sheriff's Office in 2008. Officer Alexander worked in the jail where he was a member of the utility response team for 3 years before joining the Johnston Police Department. Officer Alexander began his career in Johnston in July of 2011 and served as a patrol officer until a workplace injury took place and took him off the streets in April of 2017. Officer Alexander spent the majority of his time on midnight patrol where he proactively interdicted criminal activity. John's trained specialties include highway interdiction and advanced roadside impairment. Officer Alexander is also certified as a taser instructor, Glock armor, and combatives instructor. He was previously a member of one of the suburban emergency response teams or tactical units, and he worked his way to assistant team leader with that. He's rejoining the Johnston Police Department after almost a 6-year break in service while he recovered from an on-duty injury that took him away from the department in 2018. John's going back to patrol where he hopes to make a positive impact on the community and seek out new professional opportunities to recalibrate his career with Johnston Police Department. So with that, Mayor, I present John for his oath of office.
Constitution of the United States
Constitution of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa. Partially,
faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties
discharge all the duties
of the office of police officer
of the office of police officer
in Johnston, Iowa,
in Johnston, Iowa,
as now or hereafter required by law.
as now or hereafter required by law.
Can I stand by you?
This is my wife, Kelly, my daughter, Everly.
That's good.
You're all dressed in uniform tonight. So John, I just want to welcome you back. You know, you had a great law enforcement experience even before you came to Johnston. You did a wonderful job for us while you were here, and we are just so happy that you've returned. So thank you very much. You bet. Well, I'm excited to meet you.
All right, next I'd call forward Officer Jody Goodwin, please. Officer Goodwin has been an Iowa certified police officer since 2005. She was previously employed with the City of Ottumwa Police Department until 2018. Officer Goodwin has a professional experience as a field training officer, trained hostage negotiator, and narcotics investigator with the Regional Drug Task Force. Officer Goodwin was hired as a police officer with the City of Johnston in March of 2018. She then transitioned to a civilian community service officer role in 2020 after suffering health issues. Officer Goodwin has been reinstated as a police officer in Johnston effective July 1, and she will be renewing her oath of office with us tonight. Jody is originally from Wilton, Iowa, and is a graduate of the University of Northern Iowa with a bachelor's degree in criminology. We're very excited to welcome Jody back to her sworn position and look forward to the many positive contributions she's going to make in patrol and in our community. She's a shining example of dedication and perseverance it takes for a lifelong career in law enforcement. With that, Jody?
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Jody Goodwin, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa. Give me a hand. And that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my ability, discharge all the duties of the office of police officer in Johnston, Iowa, as now or hereafter. That's a tough one. Required by law.
Required by law.
Your family members read? Okay. Introduce.
My husband, Matt Goodwin.
And Jody, I just want to say, you keep trying to get away from me, but I just want to say, it's been a long journey for you. And, you're a great police officer. And just like the other police officer, John, that I just swore into office, we are just so delighted to have you back. So thank you so much.
Always interesting to me, you get a group of police officers that have to stand publicly in front of a city council, and they become very reserved. They will solve whatever problems in the community that you have, including gunfire, but put them in front of a city council, and it's... All right, finally, I'd like to invite up Officer Preston Russell to join me, please. Officer Russell began with the police department in July 1st of this year. He's a lateral transfer officer from the city of Cedar Falls, where he served as a public safety officer. He's currently certified through the state of Iowa as both a police officer and a firefighter, and recently obtained both state and national certifications as an EMT. Officer Russell is originally from Lisbon, Iowa, and later attended Mount Mercy University, where he earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. In 2017, Officer Russell began his career with the Cedar Falls Police Department. While there, he received training and experience in crisis intervention, de-escalation tactics, and tactical medical response. Officer Russell served as a member of their Special Weapons and Tactics Unit for multiple years and is currently certified as a precision driving instructor through the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. Officer Russell's made his recent career move alongside his wife, who is originally from the Des Moines area. He's focused on the greater community policing mission of the Johnston Police Department and is excited for additional professional opportunities with us. With that.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Preston Russell,
I, Preston Russell,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
that I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties
discharge all the duties
of the office of police officer
of the office of police officer
in Johnston, Iowa,
in Johnston, Iowa,
as now or hereafter
as now or hereafter
required by law.
required by law.
Your family?
I do, my wife and her daughter.
Would you like to introduce them to us?
wife Kylie Russell, and our daughter Hannah.
We're busy.
Do you have anything to add to that? Maybe? Before you slip away, Preston. I don't know why they just keep running away from me tonight. So Preston, I want to welcome you to Johnston. I've lived in Cedar Falls myself when I was going to school there, and I've lived in Johnston now for 30 years. You've picked the right community. We're really glad to have you here. You've got wonderful experience in law enforcement, and you'll do an amazing job for us. So we're glad to have you part of our team. So you bet. I'll share with the rest of the audience as the police officers and their families are leaving, but I went to a recent function that the police department had for all of their employees. And I couldn't believe how many children were in that room. I mean, you know, lots of new babies. So I think our police officers are doing more than just protecting us. But they're great. They're all wonderful people. Okay, we have one additional item that was added to the public communications. And Josh, I'll let you handle that.
Good evening, Council. We want to take a moment to introduce you to Ethan Standard. He's our new Economic Development Project Manager. He comes to us most recently from Creston, Iowa, though he's a resident of the Metro here. And he has an undergraduate degree in community planning from Iowa State University and a master's from Drake in public administration. So this is Ethan, and just wanted you to meet him.
Welcome, Ethan.
Thank you.
Is Josh treating you okay?
Yes.
All right,
I'm
thank
sure he
you.
would. Thank you. We are still under public communications. Is there anyone in the audience that is here on an item that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to public hearings. We have no public hearings this evening, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans.
Motion passed. Moving on to the non-consent agenda, item 7A. Consider resolution number 24-185, a resolution fixing a date for a public hearing on the proposal to enter into a development agreement with Fairway Stores, Inc., and providing for publication and notice thereof. Josh.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you've covered the basics. We're setting a public hearing for Fairway Stores, as you've shared. This is a conversation we've been ongoing with Fairway for some time. So Council has any questions? I'm available.
Any questions for Josh?
So this will be on the agenda. Sets a public hearing for August 1st, or with our
5th.
first, August 5th, our first council meeting. Okay.
It's our next council meeting. Yep.
Any other questions? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve resolution number 24-185?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Burkhart,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7B, consider approval of resolution number 24-188, a resolution approving the site plan for North Point Church Addition at 9901 Northwest 62nd Avenue, PZ case 24-20.
So this application was submitted by North Point Church as part of their childcare expansion. The site was rezoned this past April from R1 district to the C2 district, and as proposed meets all the required bulk regulations as well as open space and parking requirements. With the removal of the existing trees on the east side of the site due to the building expansion, the applicant is looking for council acceptance of an alternative landscape buffer consisting of 6 understory trees as well as 10 evergreens to be planted in line with the existing buffer that currently exists. A new detention basin is to be constructed on the northwest side to pick up the new impervious surface that is to be built. The discussion last Monday at the Planning and Zoning Commission centered around the recreational facility next to that detention basin on the pickleball/basketball courts. That would be open to the public, and it would be consist of, as well as additional parking, would be used for additional parking in big events such as like Easter service or Christmas service. Member of the North Point team is here. He can discuss in detail further what their kind of intended use for that is and any additional questions that you may have for them. The commission, the P&Z board did recommend approval, and I can answer any additional questions you may have as well.
Council, have any questions for Jacob?
I do, Mayor. Jacob, tell me again, how many trees are being removed?
They're removing 12 trees on that east side, and they were going to replace it with 16 for that buffer, as well as there's going to be 4 trees planted around those basketball courts in that detention center. So we're removing 12, we're gaining 20. So they're planting 20, so we're gaining 8 trees in total.
But the trees that we're gaining, we're losing oak trees and we're gaining
6 understories.
understory, which are typically not as long-lived as an oak tree, neither are they as supportive of native plant material. Do you think that the owner, developer would consider perhaps working in some more oak trees back into the plan?
That is, I cannot answer that question for them, but
I would give it a recommendation. I won't make it a requirement, but we lose canopy all the time, and oak trees support a number of our native bird species, more so, and they're longer living than the understory trees. So I would appreciate it if you could find some space for a few oak trees. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on this item? Please state your name and address.
Evan Riddell, 6708 Sheldon Court, here in Johnston, Green Meadows North. Greetings, Mayor, Council. Just to answer your question, I'm the Director of Operations at North Point Church. Absolutely consider it done in terms of adding oak trees. If you had any further questions about the specifics, I'm happy to add them in. Drew Lewis from Bishop Engineering is also in digitally if you had any more specific questions.
Any other questions, council? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve resolution number 24-188?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Cope?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Burkhart?
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7C, consider approval of resolution number 24-189, a resolution approving the preliminary plat for Greenwood Haven Plat 1. The subject property is located at the eastern termini of Northwest Windsor Drive and Timberwood Drive, PZ case 24-16.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight you have in front of you a preliminary plat that subdivides 9.9 acres into 14 lots for single-family residences, 1 stormwater detention outlot, and 2 public street lots. Property is located at the eastern termini of Timberwood Drive and Northwest Windsor Drive, just west of the Greenwood Hills Park on Northwest 86th Street. Start with a little background for you on this project. The parcel was platted as part of Greenwood Hills Plat 3 in 1996 as an outlot. It was intended for future development and extension of the roadways at that time. We just have not had the proposal come to fruition, and we have this in front of us now in 2024. No other approvals have occurred to date. Property is shown on the Thrive 2040 comp plan, the suburban mixed residential, and the proposed usage would be compliant with the comprehensive plan. Property is presently zoned R160 small lot residential zoning district, and lots would meet all bulk requirements. One particular note here, due to the length of the cul-de-sac on Timberwood Drive and our restrictions on the amount of trips on cul-de-sacs being no more than 250 daily trips, and per code we assume 10 trips per home. The plat does establish a condition that lots on Timberwood Drive can only be developed as single unit dwellings. R160 district does allow for 2-unit dwellings by right, so that would be prohibited on Timberwood Drive because of the cul-de-sac regulations. 2-unit dwellings are a possibility on Northwest Windsor Drive, and that would be per zoning. Applicant has indicated an intent to develop it as single unit as well. They can certainly provide additional commentary on that as well. Road network out here, as I just touched on, it'd be extension of the 2 cul-de-sacs terminating in 2 cul-de-sac bulbs. Northwest Windsor Drive, pretty small addition there. Timberwood Drive, we require cul-de-sacs to be no more than 1,000 feet. This is 930 feet, so it meets all of our cul-de-sac length and trip count requirements on both streets. Sidewalk would be installed on both sides of the new streets. Trail does presently exist along the southeastern property boundary. There are 3 locations where that trail does encroach onto the private property outside of the public-owned greenbelt. As far as staff can tell, that trail is located where originally designed in 1996 by the previous developer. For some reason or another, easements never got filed, but it does appear that it is located where it was originally planned as designed by that developer, not as designed by the city. They are showing trail easements to rectify that lack of easement on this preliminary plat. Utilities for the site will be all public: sanitary sewer, water, storm sewer. Sanitary sewer, Northwest Windsor Drive will connect to an existing stub that came from the Courtyards at Windsor development just to the north. Timberwood Drive would be serviced off of a new sanitary sewer main extension that comes up from Windsor Parkway in the northeast, up along the north boundary of Lot 10, between the lot lines 9 and 10, and then running along Timberwood Drive. That would allow for all sanitary sewer to be gravity main. In regards to stormwater, this new storm sewer will collect both stormwater from this development as well as some additional areas within the west adjacent Greenwood Hills existing neighborhood. There are areas that drain currently to the dead ends, and there is no storm sewer to collect that. It just flows off the end of the road into the area, and it has eroded some channels through the parcel over date, so an uncontrolled system. And it does go to a 30-inch storm sewer that goes to the trail and eventually to the creek in the city greenbelt. That 30-inch storm would be removed. All of that stormwater collected into storm sewer and routed to engineered swales to convey that water to a stormwater detention basin in the northeast. This stormwater basin is designed pursuant to our previous stormwater management standards in accordance with their application coming in prior to July 1. So they are addressing water quantity, water quality, channel protection standards, and it is an overall improvement of the stormwater drainage within the neighborhood. There is the property is presently heavily treed. There's, I don't think there's any debating that. Looking back at historical aerial images, a lot of these trees grew up since about 2000. I did provide you in your packet aerial images, which I also have up on the screen, that show kind of the change of the area from more of a field into a tree-covered parcel by 2024. The trees on the site, this applicant did do a survey pursuant to city code of 15% of the area. They did 2 samples, one on the north, one on the south, generally representative of the site, and then we can extrapolate out the total quantity of the site based on that data that is allowed by city code. They found a combination of ash, black cherry, boxwood, cedar, cottonwood, elm, hackberry, and mulberry within the site. Applicant is proposing to remove areas of the tree. Tree cover. They are looking to preserve approximately 3 acres of tree cover. 2 areas of preservation of special note. A 25-foot tree conservation easement along the existing trail along the southeast. So that'd be a no disturbance area. And that is really intended for several purposes. One, that is the area where we're likely to have some of the greatest benefit to the public, being that it's adjoining a public trail rather than internal to a private site presently. And our Parks Department also had concerns about constant flow from irrigation systems sheet flowing across our trail. Other areas of our community, we have had that issue where it then causes kind of a slimy surface. By having this 25-foot easement, irrigation systems couldn't be right up on the trail, so they'll have to sheet flow and infiltrate into the ground before they can get there. So it should minimize that concern of getting that slimy surface on the trail, and that's what our Parks Department was primarily concerned about. Other area of preservation is within Lot 10. Applicant is looking to build their own personal residence there. They can certainly provide additional context of their plans on how they'll develop that Lot 10. And there is a 15-foot trail buffer along the existing trail. Applicant is requesting council accept an alternative. That alternative being acceptance of the mature trees along the trail in lieu of planting new trees. The exception would be if there is an area that they would have to remove trees in it where that buffer is required, they would replace them in accordance with the standards. And that would be kind of that lots 10 through 11 area, kind of that 11 area. And then along the stormwater basin, those would be the areas where they'd have to come back and replant. Other than that, the existing mature canopy would be retained. Parkland for the site was, yes.
When you say along the stormwater basin, are you talking about the stormwater basin in Outlot Z?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, they are showing plantings there along the toe of the slope for the basin there on Outlot Z on sheet 6 of 6. Parkland for this site was dedicated with Greenwood Hills Plat 3 in 1996, so no additional parkland is required. Property is not located within any FEMA floodplain. All adjoining roads are presently constructed to urban standards, so there'd be no improvements to adjacent roadways. We did provide notice to immediate adjacent property owners as well as all property owners on Timberwood Drive down to the intersection. Really, those are the property owners that we anticipate to have impact or at least the greatest potential for impact from this development being immediately adjacent. We did receive a number of public comments. I did provide those in your staff report. There was one additional that came in this afternoon. I did provide that to you via email as well as added it to board docs. And I also had a copy of the P and Z minutes on your board docs as well. Planning and Zoning Commission has considered this. They have recommended approval. It was a vote of 3 yes, 1 no. With that, happy to go into further questions, or go into further detail, answer any questions you may have. We do have the applicant and their representatives as well. And I do believe you'll have members of the public that will want to address the council.
Council have any questions for Clayton?
Clayton, can you refresh my memory why we can't connect the first cul-de-sac to the development to the north?
There was a desire by, you're talking the Northwest Windsor Drive, the shorter one?
Yeah.
The developer to the north did not want to have any public access through there. Neighborhood didn't want to have a through road connection to allow for cross traffic. So the way it's constructed and platted to the north, it's all private access easement, so we do not have legal access through there anymore. But that was determined in 2022, I believe.
Other questions for Clayton?
Clayton, I do have a couple of questions. The first question has to do, as you mentioned, the easements and the private access across that north land. I know there were some comments and conversations in the P and Z meeting about the developer reaching out to see if they could secure even beyond the sewer access for staging of equipment and things along those lines. Was there any further follow-up with regard to that you're aware of?
I believe they've reached out, but I'll allow the developer to answer that since I was not involved in any of those conversations.
Okay. I also want to make sure that I understand and I'm reading this map right, because this is not my forte. I am looking at that page 6 of 6 of the plat that you have in front of you. The light green shaded area represents what?
Trees to be preserved.
Okay. How many trees won't be preserved as extrapolated from the survey?
I do not have that number right in front of me, but I could certainly figure that out when I sit down, maybe in between comments.
Right. The other thing I want to understand, the 25-foot conservation easement is expressed from the back of the lot line forward. Is that correct? Is that the
rear lot line towards the front line?
Okay.
So it's the rear 25 feet.
So there are a couple of circumstances that it looks like, because the trail is currently encroaching, that we won't have 25 feet of conservation easement away from even center line of the trail. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that would primarily be applicable on lot 11 here. And they are showing new plantings in accordance with our standard trail buffer easement requirements.
What would be the distance from the edge of the trail to the conservation easement on lot 11?
To the existing 25-foot easement?
Yes, as best is there even a 25-foot conservation easement declared for lot 11?
I believe it is shown because there would be some preservation, I believe, in the southwest.
I don't know what that solid line is with those small circles. It looks like it cuts right to the trail.
So they're showing some shrubs, some new trees here. They are showing the line that's in the trail, that's the center line. So I can get you a measurement. I don't have it off my cuff, but I can get you one really quick.
While you have that kind of zoomed in there, do you see that kind of lower left-hand corner of lot 11 nearest the trail? What is that solid line right there represent?
This purple one?
Nope, at least on mine, it's black.
Oh, you talking this one here?
Yes.
Tree protection fencing is what the engineer just indicated.
And that's only during construction? Or is that permanent?
That'd be during construction. Our tree preservation requirements are protection during construction.
Okay. So why is there no tree protection? Simply because there aren't trees there, or they're going to have to be replaced on lot 11?
That would be the basis there.
Okay.
There'd be nothing to protect because it's being removed.
And then lastly, let's talk a little bit about this overland flow. It will cause trees to have to be removed to be able to put in that overland flow?
Yes.
And what's an alternative to an overland flow?
A pipe in the ground.
And the advantage of overland flow, as you shared with me last week, is it does allow for some evaporative means. It also allows for some kind of stilling of the water to some extent, right? So we get water quality improvements that we wouldn't necessarily have through a tube.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that.
And
correctly.
even if you did a pipe, standard would be you'd still remove it because you have to dig the hole to get it in, and we don't want trees over pipes generally, especially public utilities. So either scenario, I would anticipate tree removal. The swale at least gives us additional benefits for water quality improvement.
Is there any part of that swale that is within the 25-foot easement or the 25-foot conservation?
Yes, this very southeastern portion, and the version I have in front of here, and I updated earlier today, they have trimmed that conservation easement back to the western line of the overland flowage easement. So that conservation easement would not run the full length of lot 10. It would stop kind of where I'm going over with my cursor there.
Is that's currently what's depicted right now?
That's what's depicted on the most current, which was updated a little earlier today, this afternoon.
Okay. Was that mentioned in your presentation?
I don't recall if I said that or not.
Okay.
I apologize if I did not. That's the only change that occurred since publication.
All right, for now, I have no further questions.
I have some questions for Clayton. We did a fairly extensive stormwater management project in this area between the two streets, between Highland Oaks Drive and I think it's Timberwoods.
Yes.
Was that the whole expansion all the way down to our park, or it stopped somewhere in there? Can you show on the map where that project stopped?
It went all the way up to the public road.
So it went from the park all the way to the public road?
Yeah, and the park was
So
actually
we've already
constructed.
gone through this whole ravine, fixing the eroded slopes?
Yes.
For some reason, I thought it didn't cover that area. Okay.
And through that whole area, the pond was constructed to address some water quality and quantity requirements. We made it pretty much as big as we could with the footprint we had. It's not size that would meet current standards, but considering the original developments didn't have any stormwater management, anything was an improvement, really.
That was going to be one of my questions, because I did listen to the P&Z, or I watched the P&Z video, and someone had mentioned that it was undersized, but we pretty much got it as big as we could with the space we had.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions for Clayton?
So I guess Clayton, just as a little bit of follow-up, I also listened to the P&Z meeting, and one of the things that I heard from some of the residents who talked at the meeting was concern that they have expressed, or they've met with city staff about erosion that they've seen along the trail. Not along the trail, but stream bank erosion after that project was completed. So I wasn't aware of that. And I don't know if you or Dave, or maybe I just misheard, but what I was hearing was that there were some residents who felt that erosion protection project maybe didn't come to fruition as desired. I don't know if you or Dave could add anything to that.
So that comment was specific where kind of this new outlet comes where it intersects with lot 45 to the south here. This is right when we're starting to enter into the forebay. I think it's important to remember streams, they do meander and move over time, so some amount of movement and erosion is to be expected. This would not be anticipated to make it worse. They are showing erosion control stone that would come from the outlet. And with the construction plans, we'd get a lot more precise detail to make sure that it's coming up to the top of bank on the opposing so that any outflow is not causing an erosive situation on the opposing bank. That would be intended to be more fully detailed in construction plans, but for preliminary plat purposes, they are showing erosion control protection at that site that the erosion concern is. We are aware of that area as staff. We are continuing to monitor it. But like I said, it is kind of entering the forebay. That slight movement one way or the other is to be expected, and it hasn't reached the level of concern to warrant city intervention yet.
Okay. I want to kind of ask you a question about kind of the first page of the staff report. It talks about the stormwater text addition.
Yes.
So, and I think you have an attachment that shows the existing, some existing parts of this. It's already been developed. Yeah, that chart right there. And so, can you explain for those areas that are shaded in yellow, how the stormwater that currently in that area currently works and how it would flow or maybe work in a better way if this development, if this plat is approved and construction results?
Yeah, so there's 3 separate drainage areas of interest that I've highlighted yellow. Perhaps I should have done them in separate colors. Apologies for that. Starting from the north, we have drainage area 2. This generally covers the houses and rear yards along Oak Ridge Place. Those do presently drain north into the courtyards at Windsor development. It's about 2.6-7 acres that go that way. And post-development conditions, it will actually reduce. About a ½ acre less will be draining in that direction, so it's a reduction in flow. And that area is presently undetained. Courtyards at Windsor did design their stormwater system to convey that water through their site adequately, safely, so it is sized appropriately. And it's a reduction in flow going that direction. These next 2 drainage areas are also presently undetained. They are presently just outletting generally off the ends of Northwest Windsor Drive and Timberwood Drive in an uncontrolled manner. There's no storm sewer in that location. So once they get off the pavement, they just find the lowest possible path and make its way down to our greenway and the stream. And there is a 30-inch storm sewer that had been installed along and under that trail to capture that water that's coming to help convey it down to the stream. All that stormwater will be picked up by new storm sewer constructed with the roadway extensions, conveyed through those storm sewers and engineered swales to a stormwater detention basin, which is at least designed to address water quality, quantity, channel protection volumes. Those areas will not be treated for water quality or extra detention. They'll be allowed to be passed through as off-site flow, but there will be an overall improvement in the sense that they're getting down to the stream in a controlled manner rather than an uncontrolled manner being released at top of slope.
Can I just ask, but that stormwater that's in this, at least part of the stormwater in this yellow area, will that flow along the overland flow easement that Councilman Burkhart was asking about?
Yes, it will all go through that area. So it will get
There'll be
water.
there'll be a little bit of that kind of that.
Yeah, so I guess I shouldn't say it won't get water quality benefit. It won't have extended detention of that. They'll be able to release that right away.
I just want to make sure. Okay, perfect. Okay.
Thanks for that clarification.
I know that one of the questions that's come up is And maybe you can go to the site plan now. Maybe go to anything that shows kind of where the houses will be platted. Yeah, that's fine right there. There's been a question raised about on the cul-de-sac on Windsor Drive. I think it's Windsor, is it, whatever the northern street is there. And that if cars are heading into that area, that they will, whether there's enough kind of a buffer for the people who live in that neighborhood to the north in that EPCON area to kind of keep headlights and those types of things out. As I understand, there's basically when you have a development like that, each developer is, there's supposed to be a 30-foot buffer. What could be 15 feet on one side, 15 feet on the other side. But in this case, EPCON has all 30 of that on their property, right?
That's correct.
And I drove up there today, just because as a follow-up and kind of to prepare for today's meeting. And it looks to me that EPCON has built a small, like a raised area. Berm, thank you. I thank you. They have a small berm, and then there's even some plantings on top of that. And then there's obviously a lot of existing vegetation there too. Is that your understanding as well?
I went out there today as well, and from my inspection, it does not appear any of the required landscape plantings have been installed to date. I did make the developer aware this afternoon that they are required to get those installed. So hopefully that will help to create that buffer that's required to be there.
So just so as so when EPCON submitted their site plan and their site plan was approved, it had plantings, required plantings that have not been done. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Okay. So to a certain extent, even if you look at it today, you're not getting the full effect of the potential plantings that will be there.
That is correct. The one thing I'll add on regarding that cul-de-sac and proximity to the development, going back kind of in the history for you, and I'm going to test your memory, but Randy Clarkson was then the property owner of this site, and he had shared a concept drawing at the time of that rezoning and development that showed a cul-de-sac and roads, maybe not identical to this, but kind of, especially along Windsor, not grossly different. So it was known at that time that there was potential. I don't know if it was as closely called out, but it at least was available documentation at that time.
The next question I want to ask you about relates to kind of condition number 4 in the staff report about tree removal. And I don't want to get, the purpose of this question is not to talk about where tree removal should occur, but really sort of the process. And I don't know if and I should have maybe asked you this before or highlighted this, could you call up, I know at the P&Z meeting, you pulled up a code section that that kind of outlines how that process works.
Get that pulled up, and I am glad you brought that up. Again, apologies, I didn't call attention to this.
Well, I'm just glad that you're glad I brought it up, because most times people aren't glad when I bring something up.
Planning and Zoning Commission did, as part of their recommendation, diverge from staff's recommended motion in that they suggested all tree removal with individual building permits should be subject to city council approval. Staff had drafted it as subject to administrative approval in accordance with our standard requirements in city code. It had explicitly been called out to make sure that developers are aware at the onset rather than it getting forgotten. We've found that we have better success in getting early compliance if it's explicitly called out rather than left unstated and just kind of hidden in code. But let me go to that section for you. Give me one moment. And while that's going, staff did draft the proposed resolution reverting back to administrative approval. Staff does strongly advise that it should be administrative. That's how we've done it on other projects. And staff retains the authority to require council approval if we feel that it's inconsistent. But going to highlight over the applicable text.
And I don't know if you can blow it up at all, or,
Protected tree status may be revoked by the city council with approval of a site plan or plat when the application of a building permit, demolition permit, or grading permit requires the removal of protected trees. City council approval may be required at the discretion of the community development director if it is determined that the removal of the protected trees does not meet the intent of this chapter.
and was this language, when we did our revision to the zoning code, was this language looked at or revised?
That language, I believe, was carryover from even the old code, so I don't think that was special attention called out to that specific section there.
But the way it sort of works is that that in order to, before you get a grading permit, if the community development director, they have the authority, but they also have the ability to say, no, I'm gonna take this to the council, which is kind of a little bit of a hammer that they have to ensure or push or encourage the developer to take an approach that is consistent with our policy or really our intent of protecting existing trees to the extent we can.
Yep, and so when we're looking at a tree removal plan with a house plan, going through kind of the criteria for revocation, is it a hazardous tree? Is it diseased or infectious? Is it a dead tree? If you were to prune it, could it be done safely? If it's in a power line easement, if it's a prohibited tree that hasn't been updated in the code yet, but that has been changed, or those are really the only ones applicable. So if it doesn't meet one of those criteria for automatic, then we look at it in a little more scrutiny. And generally what we're looking at is within the allowed building area of a site, you need to be removing the minimal amount necessary to complete the improvements, plus generally a buffer of 10 to 20 feet to allow for equipment. And it does depend on what exactly is adjacent to the site. I mean, if you have right at 10 feet, a big 24-inch bur oak, that might not have a good chance of living, but if it's a smaller 6-inch oak or something, it might have a better chance. So we are taking into consideration what specifically is on site, but it needs to be contained to the minimum area necessary. If you're going beyond that, we're looking that you're probably gonna have to go back to council.
And so when you, in the original staff report that went to P and Z that had what I would call quote unquote administrative approval language, that the process, when you're talking about administrative approval, you're really talking about this process that says the community development director can either approve it or deem it that the council needs to be approved. Is that
Yes, that is accurate.
Right. So it really is a hybrid already. Is that fair?
Yep, and if we find that it's not consistent, if there was some really special, unique tree there, we probably would say it needs to come back to council. If it's
Especially a tree that's on our, protected maybe isn't the right word, but obviously approved.
yeah, a
tree
desirable,
Desirable trees.
if we had another magnolia tree, for example, that's probably something that we would want to have council input on rather than just administratively taking that on.
Those are all my questions at this time.
Any other questions for Clayton?
Mayor, I have a follow-up since we're on the topic of protected trees. Does staff feel comfortable that we will not be losing any of those protected status trees based on an extrapolation of 15% of sample?
Well, a protected status tree is anything 6-inch caliper diameter or larger, so.
And I never saw anything in the site survey within that 15% that talked about a caliper size of 6 inches or larger. Is the sample quantity only those that are 6 inches and larger? I'm looking at the staff report where you listed the table.
Okay, in the staff report, I did not get the specifics on it, but on the plan itself, sheet 3 of 6, bottom right-hand corner, they do break it down by species and size. For the purpose of the staff report, I just consolidated it down to just species to really try and reflect diversity of species. but that data is presently up on the screen.
Does our current resolution that's before us explicitly indicate our revocation of these protected trees that are listed on page 3 of 6?
It does not explicitly state that. It, by approval of the plat showing the removal, you're approving the removal. It's not explicitly written as such.
And just for clarification from our legal counsel, based on the ordinance that Clayton pointed out, do we need to explicitly revoke? Can you go back to that ordinance, please, Clayton?
The code specifically says that protected tree status may be revoked by the city council with the approval of a site plan or plat. So if you are approving a plat that shows tree removal, you are approving that tree removal.
That is implied through that. Okay.
And that is consistent with how we've done past approvals as well.
Any other questions for Clayton?
I do have one last question for Clayton, I'm sorry. So I'm looking now at sheet, I think it's sheet 1 of this site plan.
Cover sheet?
No, I'm sorry, sheet 2. So, and this kind of goes to council member Burkhart's question about protecting trees that are on lot 10 as that overland flow easement gets close. So are these are all the circles of trees that would be, if I see a circle and I see a tree numbered, is that vegetation that's going to remain, or is it, what is the dividing line?
So the dark green is removed, the light green is preserved. The trees that you see there listed, those were carried over data from a city study we did for our Greenway project. So they've just imported that data for utilization of their planning purposes.
So if it's a tree that's indicated, I see a 16-inch mole that's inside that green area, then that would be likely removed just because it's in that green hatched area.
Yeah, if it's in the dark green, yes. I would, for the purposes of removal or not removal, the approval, you would be granting approval for removal of any tree within the dark green area.
Then Clayton, that's counter to approval when building permits come through.
Lot 10 still has trees in the buildable area.
So the dark green that I'm looking at on page 2 of 6 has that massive span of hatched green. That's what you're calling the dark green. And if maybe I misunderstood, any tree within the hatched area, we're giving permission to be taken out.
Yes. That is what the applicant has requested.
Clayton, how many trees is that?
Get you that number when I sit down. I do not have that right on the top of my mind. The applicant can certainly provide additional commentary on their basis for the ask.
So if I,
The light green hatch is not tree removal. Those are protected trees.
No, I'm looking at the dark green area all around the island of light green. All where lots 1, 2, 3, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, all of the trees on any of those lots could be removed?
As proposed, they are requesting approval to remove all those trees.
So this whole thing about about having, if there's going to be a tree removed within that area outside of the building, or when the building permit comes in, and if it's in Lot 3, and the whole of Lot 3 is covered in permission to remove trees, they're not going to come here and ask for permission
Those trees
at
will be
all.
gone before they're even as the building
Right,
permit.
the only
Lot 10 is the
place
one.
would be the 10, right?
And there is a small section on Lot 1 in the northwest. And then the stuff in the conservation easement would not be eligible for removal.
Unless, I mean, I think that's the question, one of the questions I have though, is that as we talk, that overland flow easement, the 25-foot conservation easement, especially as it gets towards the northeast and gets closer to lot, right in that area where your cursor is, the easement is less than 25 feet, correct?
They've actually trimmed that back so it stops kind of here where my cursor is.
They would trim what back?
They trimmed the conservation easement so it does not encumber the, I guess in this location, it's the side, the south 25 feet, kind of from, kind of bring this number 10 downwards, kind of.
But the condition that we are being asked to approve, number 5, city council acceptance of an alternative buffer for the required buffer along the side and rear lot lines adjacent to Greenway Hills Greenway Trail. Said alternative buffer shall be composed of existing mature trees to be located within a tree conservation easement encumbering the southeastern 25 feet of each lot. When gaps in the existing vegetation are created due to removals, new plantings shall be installed in accordance with the standard buffer requirement. I don't see any language in 5 that indicates that the buffer would be any less than 25 feet.
I think the intent, and maybe it didn't come through well, is the fact that there's not technically a buffer that encumbers into this site at that location. If you measure 15 feet from the center line of trail at that location, it stays on city-owned parcel. As you move west, it does get onto their site,
What gets onto their site?
the 15-foot buffer. It's measured 15 feet from center line of trail.
Right, but we're waiving the 15 feet.
I just wrote it as a blanket statement with the intent being where, and maybe it should have said it this way, where the buffer is required, we're accepting the 25-foot easement in lieu of planting new plants.
But why isn't the buffer required all along lot 10? Because even if you said it just like you just said it,
And I think it could be interpreted that way, and I guess if that's the way the council feels that you're granting the alternative with the construction plans, we just make sure that additional plantings are shown in that location where they'd be doing removal.
yeah, but I don't think the condition says that. The condition talks about a 25-foot easement shall be composed existing and mature trees to be located within a tree conservation easement encumbering the southeastern 25 feet of each lot. So they are not, their tree conservation easement doesn't encumber the the southeastern 25 feet of each lot in that spot, correct?
No, so just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, as they have it shown, you're thinking condition 5, if it was to match what they're showing, should be the southeastern 25 feet, except the eastern, I don't know how far that is, 120 feet or so. I'm not saying that's what it should say, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that the language in condition 5, as I understand what condition 5 is, we're replacing what would otherwise be a 15-foot easement with a 25-foot easement, right?
Yes.
Okay, and it states that that 25-foot easement exists all along the property. But I think we're acknowledging, or you're acknowledging, that that isn't the case in the final 120 feet of the of the area, and that's part of the area where the trees are planning to be removed per the green hatched with all the trees being removed. So I think part of it is that the condition in number 5, I don't think is accurately stated,
Okay,
and I think is confusing. And I think then that leads to the additional trees that gives the developer the authority to remove trees that I think some folks may have some concerns about. I'm certainly willing to, I think part of this is because it's an overland flow easement, right? And I see value in the overland flow easement. So I'm certainly supportive of the overland flow easement. What I'm not supportive of is conditions that I don't think are accurate to what the plan really says. And I don't think condition 5 is accurately written.
certainly get that. I can propose some language that would correctly reflect what they're showing.
Okay.
Councilman Evans, did you have a question?
I just, you had said that the parkland dedication was done back in 96. Just help me figure out how this parkland dedication thing works. So it was approved in 96. The entire plat at that time, because this is a separate development, wouldn't this also have to fall under the rules?
They provided all the park, so this was an outlot within that development, which they had then had plans for development. They had shown how it'd be developed with actually more lots than what you're seeing here today. And they provided parkland in excess of the lots platted at that time with the purpose of satisfying the future lots to be platted. And that dedication was the Greenway corridor.
But that was with a different developer.
Yes. But it covered this property. So that transferred with the land because the zoning
That's the part I didn't
transfers with the land.
Burkhart?
Clayton, on that front, real quickly, while we're touching on it, the parkland dedication in 96, all of our parkland dedication kind of has this magic ratio to it as far as amount of land per occupant or per household. And I understand, obviously, they had originally or initially kind of dreamed in 96 of platting this with more lots. Was that ratio, though, any different than what it is now with regard to the per person or per resident in that regard?
It would have been different because we now use census data from 2000, and that was using pre-2000 data. I don't recall the specific numbers off the top of my head, but when I looked at it, they were still in excess. The area that had been granted was still in excess of what would otherwise be required. Okay. Just quick math for you. If new parkland were to be required of 14 lots, you're talking 0.2086 acres.
Okay.
So about a fifth of an acre based on 14 lots.
Let's go back to that hatched or map, page 3 of 6. I just want to make sure I understand. I presumed that the blue hatch was their sample areas. Is
That's
that correct?
correct.
Is it safe to assume, which I know gets me in trouble, that the blue hatch, though for the purposes of tree removal, is the same as the dark green hatch? In other words, anything in the blue hatch could be removed? Is there a disclaimer?
Don't think that they are one and the same. For the removal purposes, I would direct you to page 2 of 6.
So anything in page 2 of 6, which appears, at least on the northern side, to be the same.
Yeah, it's the southeastern one. I can't tell right from, without zooming way in probably. Melissa, maybe you know, does the southeastern, does that encompass removal or is there areas of preservation?
That is, no, that is areas of removal for the construction of the.
So both areas of blue would be within the areas of removal.
I don't have any further questions of Clayton. I certainly would enjoy asking questions of the developer.
Any other questions for Clayton? Thank you, Clayton.
I believe I heard that there was a desire to get a calculation of the extrapolation of trees and the area to be removed. I could do that while I'm sitting back there. I just want to make sure I'm using my time wisely.
My only hesitation in doing so is obviously I don't want you to miss out on the conversation, the questions that may require you. And I guess I'd amend my request though eventually from the standpoint of those that would fall under the category of protected tree, the 6-inch diameter or greater that we would extrapolate out in that shaded area specifically, that darker green hatched.
Well, I will plan to pay attention to the conversation primarily.
All right.
I would invite the developer to come forward, make any comments that you would like to make, and then I'm certain that there will be questions.
Thank you. This is Narasimha Palagumi, 16399 Boston Parkway in Clive, Iowa. My wife Christina and I bought this property in December. I'm going to defer to Luke. He's our co-developer as well, who will be building most of the homes on this site. And Melissa obviously knows this land quite a bit. So we bought this land to build our own home and want to move in here. And then we realized, oh, we need roads, we need other things. It's not developed. So we went to the, Luke came as a friend's friend, and we talked about developing it and keeping 3.5 to 4 acres for ourselves. And then we found out we need a detention pond, and the size of that. We have 4 kids. Just want to give a personal note: 13, 8, 3, and 3.5, and 4 almost. We foster parents. We foster a lot of children in our home. My 8-year-old loves trees. We love the outdoors. We're not here to remove trees. We're tree lovers. We love the nature. We have a lot of backyard plants for the family. We go to church 5 minutes from here. My work's 5 minutes from here. I coach track at Johnston Running Club in Johnston. I'm very involved in Johnston already, even though I'm not living there. So we have a lot at stake in Johnston. I met with a lot of neighbors last time and alleviated a lot of their concerns. So yeah, we just want to move and build our home and call it our home and neighborhood, make friends for life. Really, I know there's a lot of questions about trees. I don't know all of the details on what species and all of that, but I know Melissa and Luke and Clayton have been very helpful to figure that out. I would ask that consider this project. I think we've come from the previous developer from 25 lots to 28 lots down to 22 when we started this, and we're down to 14. We're keeping bulk of that land to ourselves, and we're not going to remove the trees. We don't need to develop or build our own home. So that's pretty much the gist of what we want to do with this property. I think it's got good potential for people to make it a home. So yeah, do you have any questions for me? Or I'll have Luke come up or Melissa come up to answer more details. I'm a physician. I'm not a developer. I'm not a
Council have any questions yet?
I do, Mayor. I thank you very much. I know that Clayton kind of began by prefacing the stipulations that single-family residences could only be built or would only be able to be supported on the cul-de-sac on Timberwood because it would otherwise exceed the maximum number of trips. I know that doesn't happen or doesn't necessarily have a restriction on Windsor Drive as well, but kind of paint for us the overarching picture of the entire 13 lots remaining as to what you envision and what your co-developer envisioned for that entire
Yeah.
area.
They're all single-family homes, won't be any two-story homes or townhomes or anything like that. It's all single-family homes.
Okay. Now, talking specifically, I am pleased to hear you talk about trees. And quite frankly, my largest concern is with regard to any tree canopy that we have within our city, but especially along this trail. This trail is incredibly precious because of its tree canopy and cover. And you can, I can at least, almost get lost while walking down that trail. In other words, you can remove yourself from thinking that you're in the city of Johnston because of the beauty and really the nature that immerses and engulfs you in that capacity. I see why you like that property.
That's why we bought it.
But I also hope you see that's why we want every tree to try to stay wherever we can, at least along that property. Councilmember Cope pointed out right now that there is not, in your plans anyway, a conservation easement along that last 120 feet or so of the property on that southeast side. Would you entertain putting in a conservation easement? And if that impacted the location of your overland flow, would you consider moving your overland flow so that we could keep that conservation easement?
I was talking to Melissa. I think she said that's the only spot that she could put the overland flow without disturbing. I mean, you can come and speak. Sorry, I'll defer to her. I want to speak something.
I do, Sim, I do want to
Go
say,
ahead, yeah.
I do want to note how much we do appreciate the changes and the modifications you've made. When I would say I appreciate in the modifications you made in the proposed development, fewer lots, a shorter cul-de-sac. And also, I really appreciate the fact that you were agreed to submit the plan under our existing stormwater regulations as they existed prior to July 1st.
Thank you.
Those concessions and your willingness to do that is not lost on me. I think those are very substantial and are greatly appreciated by me and I think the residents of our city. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you.
Thank you so
personally
much for saying that.
So,
Yeah. We want to do the right thing.
yep.
All right, regarding the, Melissa Hills, Civil Engineering Consultants, 2400 86th Street. Regarding the trees along that 120 foot on lot 10, the swale has to go in that area in order to get the grades to work, to get things to flow to the pond. If I tried to move it north, I would be trying to cut a ridge through the hillside, and it would create more tree removal. So this has the least impact where it's located. We are preserving trees in both north and south of where the swale will be. There's still 18 to 20 feet of buffer between the trail and the swale grading. And there's also
So
going to
Melissa,
be.
can I just interrupt you? So when you say 18, can you kind of point your finger where that 18 to 20 feet would be roughly?
So
from your
if you look
perspective?
on this drawing here, that light green hatch that's between the dark blue and the trail, that's about 18 feet wide in here. And we don't have any grading going on in that area, so if there's a tree in that area, it would remain. Also, this light green hatch that's north of the trail, none of the trees in this location would be removed either. And I think Sim's house is probably going to be further north on the lot. So I think you're going to have some buffer in here as well.
So maybe you could, I don't, does the diagram that shows the overland flow easement, does that also indicate the trees that are impacted, or are those kind of on two different slides?
Let's see.
Because the one the blue hatch doesn't really show the overland flow easement, right?
This kind of, if I can get it to. So there are some trees from the previous tree study that was done with the city project. They all appear to be smaller trees, 10 to 15-inch trees, cottonwood, I see elm, I see mulberry. elm, cottonwood, mulberry. So I don't think any of these are desirable trees necessarily that are in there.
Well, and I think the hard part of it, the challenge, and I think, and I share Councilman Burkhart's interest in that, is you're walking along that trail, right? And so from a trail perspective in Johnston, that's really one of two trails that are heavily wooded, right? So when you're walking by that, I don't, the trees that exist there are providing you kind of an ability to kind of escape kind of the urban environment, right? And I don't care if it's a cottonwood tree or whatever tree it is. Obviously, if it's a tree that's dying and it poses a safety hazard, that's a concern. But other than that, I think sometimes we get so caught up on the species of the tree when really the purpose of the tree is to grow and provide shade. And if it's doing that, it's doing a job there. So the challenge, I think, is that if you remove the trees that are closest to the trail, and I hear what you're saying is, but there'll be trees north of there, but you
And
leave-
south, there's
Right.
18 feet that's actually on city property that would not be disturbed.
So are you saying that in that area, it's not, maybe not 25 feet, but it's at least 18 feet? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's between the north edge of the trail and the edge of our grading, there's about 18 feet of space in there where we're not disturbing anything.
So even at the closest point that it gets to the trail? Like, it looks to me as you go further east, as I'm right where it says 589, there's a dot there that looks pretty close to the trail there. And then even it looks like further west of there, the grading or your, I don't know, whatever that line is. Where is your grading? Where do I see the edge of your grade? Your grading,
You'd
whatever
have to
you
go to
call
the grading plan. So basically, the grading goes up to the property line here, but there's still some space down in here that is not disturbed, where you see the red X line.
The red X line is your grading limit?
That's silt fence is what's shown there, but
Just, I guess, the thing is as you go further east, it gets closer and closer to the.
correct. And so where we are close to the trail, we've proposed the landscape buffer because that grading is necessary to get our pond volume and to get our pond constructed. So we are providing for new trees to be planted along that route adjacent to the outlot. But adjacent to lot 10, you've got this area that's inside city park ground that's not going to be disturbed. And we're in excess of 25 feet here.
But then on outlot Z is where, and then so what you're proposing to plant a series of trees there, kind of with the intent of that those plantings don't get you back to a 25-foot easement though, right? Does your conservation easement doesn't extend to outlot Z?
No, it does not.
So it ends at lot 10? Okay.
Well, we trimmed it back because I guess we had received comment that you didn't want it to overlap the overland flowage. So we trimmed it back to only include the areas that were not encumbered by that overland flowage.
Yeah, we'll definitely be open to planting trees around the pond. I mean, I don't want to lose we like to bike and hike and run on the trails, so we don't want to lose that beauty of the nature. I'll say we'll definitely be open to planting trees around the detention pond to keep that as a park-like feel and just definitely be open to suggestions there.
And each lot will have 2 trees planted with it as well during the home building.
If you, so I totally get what you're doing. I read construction plans. I understand the grading. I understand the limitations you have. I do think that this little sliver of land that Councilman Culp is talking about, where it's going to be between, I don't know, 12 or 18 feet wide, and there might be a tree in there, there might not be a tree in there. I hear you saying that you intend to try as much as possible, keep the natural look of this trail, that it's of value to you.
Without
So
affecting the
I think
construction, yes.
what I'd like to recommend is that, you know, you make some sort of commitment to us that within this little skinny area here, you're going to commit yourself to having an oak tree planted every 25 feet or something to that effect. It's not that long an area. And I would also recommend that the planting plan that was given here, that there'd be more overstory trees. Oak trees do a heck of a lot for our native birds, animals. Also, they are very long-lived. Pollinators use them. I want to see this thing go back. I know it takes a long time. They take a long time to grow, but commit to us that there's going to be trees in there, oak trees that you're going to plant, so that in just a few years, 5 years, whatever, we're going to start seeing big, beautiful canopy.
To Councilman Cope's point, you know, we want privacy, right? I mean, I don't want all the trees to cut down and people can look to my backyard. So I want privacy from the trail, and I want trees to be there to give the privacy and the shade, because it cuts down your heating and the cooling bills. So definitely we want to do that. And I will commit to, along with Luke and Melissa, to leave as much as we can and even plant trees where we have to remove them. Absolutely.
I have a question for the engineer. The tree protection fencing, or is that what you're calling it, the fencing? Are you calling it a tree protection fencing or just the limits of
Yes.
construction fencing? Will that stay? I know that that's part of when you're platting and you're building, you're doing all the grading, you're putting in the cul-de-sacs. Would that fencing be able to stay all the way through the house building portion? Because my concern would be, as soon as that fencing comes down, then there's this random opportunity to start parking trucks and vehicles and tractors within the nice shady canopy that you've just protected.
Yeah, I think surely that fence could stay. Luke is going to be building on these lots, most of these lots himself. And I'm sure he would be willing to keep that up during home construction.
That would be great. I think that would help a lot in continuing to protect. So often, as soon as construction starts, the fencing gets knocked down, or inadvertently somebody gets it out, you know, had to move it, never put it back. So if we truly want to commit to protecting these trees, the fencing needs to be intact and stay as long as possible until seed or sod is being put down.
City code would require, or grants us the ability to require it to be installed even through. So we have the ability to require it be there.
Thanks.
Other questions for the applicants?
Mayor and developers, I have a very strong concern with so much of that green hatched area being able, without guide rails, to be able to be clear cut. I'm not questioning your intent to try to keep your property, the lot you intend to build on, private, because you encircled most of that in a lighter green hatch. Why not dedicate more of those other areas for preservation on those other plats? Or how can we guarantee that they will have more of that, other than just a comment?
I do want to mention that, You know, this area in the center here, where you can see these volunteer trees that have popped up and there's some clear space. This is one of the historic aerials from, these trees didn't exist, frankly, before Luke Clarkson passed. This was an open field and there was a few volunteer trees in here, but this was wide open when we topoed it in 2000. None of these trees existed here other than a few volunteer trees. And when Lou passed away, the kids quit maintaining the property, and that's when a lot of these volunteer trees were allowed to grow and create the tree mass that's there now.
You know, I understand that. And 20 years have now migrated since some of these pictures were taken. And you even commented that those trees, the volunteer trees, were allowed to grow. You know, to great extent, any tree in existence in our incorporated areas was allowed to grow. In other words, 20 years is a pretty hefty investment of time for a tree, as evidenced by some of these trees that if you had actually taken diameter or caliper measurements of them, wouldn't have measured even in our 6-inch protected 20 years ago, and now an ample amount are. So to some extent, I don't necessarily think that just because this, you know, has changed in 20 years from where we are, doesn't mean that those trees are any less important, when in fact, those 20-year trees are substantial and substantial to a community.
I think based on the tree survey that we did, about 60% of the trees are undesirable species according to your city code.
You also took a sampling, if I'm not mistaken, across that north side that 20 years ago didn't have trees. Only a portion of your sample.
The north tree, the fence row trees were there.
Okay, but then if you look at your sampling distance out, you're talking about kind of that space in between. You know, I appreciate you trying to take both a north side and south side sample, and I'm not an arborist. I can't tell you whether or not you should have sampled elsewhere. I appreciate you trying to extrapolate what then the density and the population of the trees are in that area. But you can't use, look, 20 years ago there weren't trees here, if now today you're saying, look, this is the sampling area that we're using to try to extrapolate another 85% of the trees that we didn't actually count. Fair?
I would like to say, though, that this open area accounts for the large majority of the trees. And like I said, these trees didn't exist in 2012, 2013. They're volunteer trees that have come up in the last decade.
More down, I mean, they didn't maintain the lands, they grew up. I mean, yes, there are trees, but
We could have tree sampled here, but we would have gotten probably Siberian elm, mulberry, and red cedar.
You chose to sample where you did, so.
Well, I'm just saying.
Luke Waniger, 4159 Panorama Drive. I own JRL Builders with my wife. I think the biggest thing is, like, you look at this tree removal grading limits plan and you're like, wow, this is a huge area, right? I mean, that's what you're looking at. You're saying, okay, well, you know, we want to save trees, and that's, you know, everybody does. Lots are more desirable when there's more trees on them. That's a fact, right? But you can't have your cake and you can't eat it too. So in order to do grading, in order to blow a street in here, to put 2 cul-de-sacs in here, to do all the stormwater detention, to do all the requirements by the city, you have to remove trees. And yeah, if we could put cul-de-sacs in here, not do any grading, and get all the requirements for the city for stormwater and paving and everything else, we would absolutely do it 100%, because those lots would sell for more and we build nicer houses on them, but you can't do that. So what basically is happening is there's 3 things. One, there's tree removal. In order for this plat to be developed, there has to be tree removal. That's a fact. By developing this land, it is benefiting the neighborhood for stormwater detention. It's exponentially better. So right now, all the stormwater detention dies into this dead-end street and then just overland flows to where it wants to go. Well, we're channeling that and putting it where it's supposed to be. So all the erosion and the concerns of the neighbors is basically alleviated at that point in time, because this is an engineered plat that is consistent with the remaining plat, and it's a better. Secondly, there's gonna be 2 cul-de-sacs on the end of these 2 streets. Right now, it's a dead end. So if there's a fire truck that gets to the end of this and is like, oh, I went down the wrong street, it has to back up. Now that there's a cul-de-sac, it has the ability to turn around. So fire and safety is way better after this. So yeah, I would agree that tree removal is a concern. But it's part of the development process. And in order to get what we need to do here, we have to take the trees down. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't want to interrupt you. I'll let you finish, and then I do have some questions for you, though.
I'll let you have it.
I fully understand that trees need to be removed for development of that property. It makes perfect sense. I kind of want to go through a couple of things, though, so that I understand who's requiring you to make the decisions that you've made thus far. The cul-de-sac on Timberwood, did the city require you to put in a cul-de-sac on Timberwood?
We had to, working with Paul Jennings, he didn't want us to do anything with his property, so we had to come to this.
The development, did the city require a cul-de-sac?
Short answer, yes.
You couldn't have done a hammerhead?
Hammerhead's a temporary turnaround for future extension. There's no plans for future extension to Windsor Parkway. And correct me if I'm wrong, Clayton, but that is the case. It's been very evident that neighbors don't want an extension, and if I lived on the street, I'd be all in on that too. So that's why we came up with these 2 cul-de-sacs. And honestly, it's not this doesn't do us any good for the cul-de-sac. It would be better to put a street through here.
But I want to get to the nuts and bolts so that everyone understands the decisions that were made when you decided to bring this plat forward. Neither cul-de-sac was required by the city.
Required?
A termination of both Wynwood Drive and Timberwood were required by the city, but a cul-de-sac was not required.
Versus a through street, or?
Versus a hammerhead, versus connecting the 2, versus something else.
Connecting the 2 is economically infeasible. There's too much land area that gets eaten up, and the dimensions of it don't allow for lots on it. So these 2 termini of a cul-de-sac were both, one, based on what we had feedback in the past on not having a through street here, and 2, Paul Jennings' inability to work with us on an extension.
Was there a reapproach, while you're on that subject, was there an approach to Paul Jennings while you're getting your sewer across that property, to be able to discuss some sort of temporary road access for staging of construction or even subcontractor vehicles as construction would take place?
The last discussion we had, he didn't want anything to be done through his property. He didn't want us to bring vehicles, he didn't want any construction traffic. We worked with him for 4 to 5 months, it was a dead end. So we had to go with this cul-de-sac concept, and we lost almost 8 lots doing that. And we actually increased the cul-de-sac from 84 to 90 feet diameter. So the cul-de-sacs were the best option we had to build my home, to build other homes, and still not able to work with Paul Jennings.
I want to talk about the number of lots, though, that were decided on. The city did not force you to choose 14 lots, did they?
So density-wise, this is zoned R160. Maximum density in units per acre is 4.35 via R160. We are 1/4 of that at 1.41 units per acre.
Sure. But again, the city did not require you to only put 14 lots on this.
The city doesn't really require anything. They have bulk regulations that you have to abide by, and we get to
Yes.
choose what we want as a developer, what path we go, whether it's 25 or 14. You have to balance, okay, you know, what sells, what are, you know, the houses gonna be like, what's the neighbor like, what's the adjacent land use? You have to compile all that and make a determination as what's the most economically feasible development, whether it's 14 or 10 lots. No, the city doesn't say you have to do X number of lots. They just have these bulk regulations.
I appreciate you admitting that, because I do agree with you. They were your choices to be able to be made. And that's, I think, what's important, because I didn't necessarily always hear that in the conversation, that they were your choices. The city was abiding by the ordinances that were established by city council, but ultimately the developer gets to choose how they're going to implement within the bounds of those ordinances.
Correct. Somebody could propose a 4.96 times, or 4.35 times 9.9, roughly 40 lot development here. It would abide by all city requirements with the exception of the 250 trips. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there, you make a determination on what you make a determination on. It's not driven by a city staff members.
All right. Thank you.
Other questions?
I just have a question about this condition 5 and the 25-foot tree conservation easement. So it says, talks about the 25 feet along each lot. And so do you consider Outlot Z not a lot? How does the 25-foot requirement not apply to Outlot Z?
I would just say that, you know, we didn't write the wording of that condition, but that 25-foot conservation easement has always been just along those specific lots. So if you wanted to clarify the condition to just refer to the lots that we're talking about, that might be.
So would that, Melissa, would that be lots 10 to 14? Or is it longer than that?
Here, I get my. So lots 11 through 14?
10.
Oh, sorry, 10 through 14, or a portion of lot 10.
Yeah, 11 through 14 and a portion of lot, and a sizable portion of, okay.
And we also have a portion in lot 1 as well. Although I don't see a call out for that conservation there, but.
Any other questions?
Where the concert, I see that there is existing vegetation remaining out of Lot 1. Is there legal wording for that conservation easement in Lot 1 on the resolution?
Yeah, I have a line, it's not in the wording, no. I don't think he specifically called out any lots in that condition. But it applies to the back triangle there of lot 1 as well.
I think, you know, tree removal is obviously a concern. It's a concern of the neighbors. It's a concern of the council. It's a concern of the developers. I think, you know, maybe a happy medium would be, instead of 2 trees per single family house that needs to be planted, maybe we double that requirement and say 4 trees. Maybe maybe it's a more specific species, like 2 oaks, and you pick the other 2. Because honestly, in 10 years, if you require 14 lots to plant 4 trees, you get the ambiance of the treed neighborhood. I mean, the street is called Timberwood Drive, right? Like, we want trees on these lots, but we have to grade to allow for development of the property. And in order to grade, we have to take trees down. So maybe it's a happy medium that we say, okay, instead of 2, we do 4. I would be all for that.
And Councilwoman Martin, we'd probably want more diversity than that though, right?
There could be more diversity than that. Actually, I appreciate that offer or suggestion. I think it's unfortunate. Johnston, everybody wants to live in Johnston. I have a newly married daughter. She wants to live in Johnston. She can't afford to live in Johnston. There's not housing that's available that she can afford. And we're picking up and putting housing in places where there's a reason why this hasn't been developed 20 years ago, because it's difficult, because it's got slopes, because it's treed. So I'm always very conflicted, because I know that we want to not be stagnant, but I also realize that to continue to bring new families in, we have to find a place for them to build their house. And so it's very conflicted for me. I would like to see us not talk about number of trees, but talk about square foot of canopy. I mean, that's the new way we should be thinking about it, because one big, huge tree is worth, 50 little bitty saplings. And we have to continue to plant trees, because we'll have a disease come along, we'll have another tornado, we'll lose trees. We got to continue to be planting them. I appreciate your suggestion. I did write a little thing about maybe what we could say is something to the effect that if there's not a tree of significant size, like 6-inch caliper over along the trail, every 30 feet from the edge of the trail back 15 or 20 feet, if there's not something there that you're willing to put a tree in. 2-inch caliper tree that comes off of our approved, we have a tree board, they have a list of approved trees for shaded woody slopes. We all know it's gonna be steeply sloped, we're gonna lose all our trees. I hear you saying that you want to work with us. I believe you do want to work with us. I think there are some ways that we could do this. We're spending hours at these meetings over and over again, because these are not the only meetings we've had, talking about forested areas where we're trying to, shoehorn these trees in there. That's what we have left for building sites in Johnston. So I don't know what else to do.
I'm taking the bulk of that land, so I'm
Yeah,
keeping that,
yeah.
so.
And I think it also has to be, brought up that you said, well, we chose this. We did, and we also chose to keep, say, 2 acres of trees where Sims Land is. And any other developer would have clear cut that.
Well, and if you look at I hate the lots that are on the south side or the creek side of Timberwood. I think that those are very steeply sloped, but you know what? They're a lot wider than the ones that are on the other side of the slope, which means perhaps we'll be able to get some more landscape in between the buildings. It'd be great if we can convince the people that are gonna build their lots that, they don't have to have mowed lawn up to the edge of their property.
And I will note that 25-foot conservation easement doesn't allow for irrigation over
Right.
that. So
Yep.
as far as, mowing and sod, that won't be a case.
I appreciate everything you guys did here. I listened to the video. I heard about you and your family and how this is your forever place. I kind of wish we had standards, like you said, that we require more trees. We don't have ordinances written like that, but I am hearing you guys saying that you are going to do all the right things, and we don't have ordinances that are we have to rely on a partnership that everybody wants to do the right thing, so.
Any other questions for the developers? Thank you. We may be calling you back up. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council on this item? You want to state your name and address?
Justin Bauer, 1115 Northeast Tuscany Boulevard, Ankeny, Iowa. I'm the builder developer, Clarity Construction and Epcon Communities. So I'm here tonight just kind of for an ask. I don't know how to get this. You know, we've got a couple homeowners in the audience here that live up next to 1 and 2. We do have that 30-foot buffer planting, which for the record, we have done the planting on the north side of our property. We normally do the ones on the outside as we do the houses. So we've sold, I think, over 20 homes now, which, by the way, thank you guys very much. I was the big bad wolf developer here 2 years ago doing what they're doing today. I appreciate their fight here, but honestly, this is I've done 6 of these. This is my 6th one in the Des Moines area, and this might end up being the best one right here in Johnston. So thank you for what you guys did 2 years ago. It's going wonderfully. But we just would, if there's some way along 1 and 2, that north boundary, if we could even add like a 10-foot buffer in addition to our 30-foot of maybe even just if there's current tree there in that 10 feet, could that stay? Because that is a little bit of canopy towards us. I understand, I've built 600 homes in my career. I get that, you know, if there's a home built on 1 or 2, they've got to be able to cut a tree down if it's going to be where the home is. But if there were some sort of, it sounds like they're willing to work on things. If we could get some sort of agreement where we could have like another 10 feet in addition to our 30, just to give our homeowners privacy. I'm sure the people who buy those lots want the privacy also. That's kind of just my ask right now. And my homeowners might have some more, I don't know, but that's my ask as the builder developer.
Can I just ask, I mean, obviously, I presume if it's maybe 10 foot is your ask, but I presume what you're really trying to do is if there's large existing trees in the back of 1 and 2 that run along, that those be preserved to the fullest extent possible.
Yeah. And, you know, and I guess my other concern would be where the cul-de-sac's going to kind of meet up with the street that we dead in there. Anything that could be done just for buffer of street lights, headlights, we have the same thing going towards their direction. And so our buffer will help with that as well. I'm kind of glad we haven't done it so that we could maybe change things accordingly to make sure line of sight and everything works out and is most efficient for, you know, really us and them, to try to protect each other from headlights, you know, going into certain windows of houses, things like that. Thank you.
Been in there yet?
Evening, my name is Chris Collinsworth. I'm the property owner at 8809 Highland Oaks Drive. My property is in your drawings labeled as lot number 45. So I'm on the other side of the creek from the plans that are proposed to you here. Before I go into my comments, I do want to just thank the council for the discussion that's been going on and taking place tonight. I appreciate the concerns that you have around stormwater and tree removal because I share those concerns. In the drawings that are depicted here, Outlot Z, the stormwater management retention pond, is proposed to drain out into the creek and is pointed directly at the bank that butts up against my backyard. I have talked to the city in the past about my concerns with erosion in that area. 10 years ago, when the city did the stormwater erosion project in that area, there was a lot of erosion control that was installed along the bank of the creek up until lot number 44, which is directly to the west of me. The lots, my lot included, to the east of me did not have very much erosion control, if any at all, put in. So my concern is that the erosion that we've experienced over the last 10 years will be exacerbated by installing roadways and rooftops that will speed up the velocity of rainwater flowing through there. I know that the engineer and developer have talked to you about how that stormwater is unabated currently. I strongly disagree with that characterization. I do believe that the topsoil and trees that are present on that parcel of land right now do a great deal to slow the water down. So my main concern tonight is with regard to stormwater. If we could find a way to outlet that water, point it to the east coming out of Outlot Z, I would greatly appreciate that. There's a pond in that direction. You don't have to worry about erosion encroaching on property owners' backyards by adding stormwater in that direction. I submitted a lengthy set of comments for the Planning and Zoning Commission to review. Within that, I offered a counter proposal suggesting that the city should purchase this property instead of developing it. I don't have the legal background to figure out how that should happen. I strongly oppose development of this property. And the reason being that as a resident, a longtime resident of this neighborhood, I have other longtime residents of this neighborhood. Our homes have been here for 20 to 30 years. It's a mature neighborhood that surrounds this plat of land. It also, a significant portion of the perimeter of this plat borders parkland. And for those of us that live in that neighborhood, we've enjoyed and appreciated the magnificence of this property as is in its untouched state for years now. Most of us assuming that this is already parkland. We've enjoyed this as a public good already. And so to see the proposal, I understand and I hear the property owners saying that they are working on preserving trees. But the proposal to remove over 2/3 of the trees in this area would be a great loss to the neighborhood and to the characteristics that make this neighborhood such an attractive place to live. If you have not already read my comments and proposal in the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'd ask that you give those consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, my name is Greg Votava. I'm the property owner to kind of dovetail off of Chris's comments on lot 46. So the property directly to the east of his lot. I share a lot of the same concerns as Chris. I've lived in this house for 12 years. So I lived through the project of the stormwater management project earlier. Initially, hold on one second, sorry. I know that Clayton mentioned that the creek is intended to naturally change its course over time. And I think that the creek has done that. My property is a unique property. It is the only property on here where the creek actually flows into my property along this whole lot. We did have some protection during that previous project. However, it was only on the kind of northwest portion of my lot. Initially, after that project was completed, I was able to hop across that creek without a lot of effort. Today, the creek itself, while it's also changed direction a little bit, it is probably at least now 15 feet wide behind my house.
Could you give me your address real quick?
Yeah, it's 8805 Highland Oaks Drive.
8805
Yes.
Highland Oaks, okay, great.
Yep. So I get that the creek's gonna change over time. When they initially finished that project, it was nicely sloped and graded down to the creek to hopefully prevent erosion. Today, if you were to go back there, it's basically a cliff off of the side. So I do have concerns about all that water directly flowing in there, especially into that outlot or into that outlet right behind Chris's house, his property. Ideally, like he said, if you could just aim all that water further upstream or further downstream from us into that whole little floodplain that was created over there for the creek to split and to go into the two ponds that are over there. I would love that. would be less concern about that water flowing directly behind our house, again, into my property as well. When we do get a substantial rainfall, that is a very, very, very high flowing creek. It doesn't necessarily reach its banks behind my house directly, but there's enough force where currently there's a very mature dead tree stuck in the middle of the creek that had been pushed down from a storm previously from this year. So there's already a ton of water that flows through there. So while I also appreciate all of your comments along the trees and keeping all that, I mean, my biggest concern would be the additional water directly into the creek behind my property. And I will just say, I understand the developers want and need to develop this. It really is such a unique property in Johnston currently. There's kind of natural trails that have been worn down over time back in throughout there. I don't know if you guys have been in that area. It's just a really unique place to be able to walk through. The tree cover is awesome back there. That's one of the reasons we purchased our property. And so any effort that we could have to keep additional trees in that space would be much appreciated. I don't love the fact that
We've been talking about
all
trees
of the
for an
trees
hour
on
and a
that
half.
property directly behind my property will be removed.
Oh, people are mad
But I
that
understand from the
there's a
grading
developer wants to
perspective
rip
that
out
might be a
trees.
requirement, but that whole outlot Z is, again, directly behind my property on the other side of the trail, so
Do I
a lot of
want to keep
coverage
this job?
there, that is valuable to the homeowners in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the audience?
What did you guys have for lunch today?
Claire Matten. I live at 9118 Northwest Windsor Drive. And I also had a concern about, in addition to what you were saying about Lot 10, Lot 11, and how many trees are actually going to be on between the trail and in the conservation easement, because there's definitely not 25 feet of trees. Wondering if there's even going to be 5 or 10 feet of trees because of how far into that property the trail goes. Again, I have a concern that we're going to end up with townhomes or something else at the end of Windsor Drive. That's a concern. I don't think there's anything that can be put in writing to require the builder to only have single family homes there. And then again, just the loss of all the trees and all of the grading that's going to be required, and whether or not the city can do anything to save this area. I would request that you seriously consider that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. I guess I'd invite the developers to come back up and respond to some of the questions or suggestions that were raised by the residents.
Alyssa Hills again. Regarding the storm sewer outlet, there was some discussion about the location of where we're outletting and changing the direction of that flow at the P&Z meeting. And we are willing to orient that pipe so it's pointed more with the direction of the flow. One of the comments of the city engineer was that they didn't want us to outlet down here in this area where they have the forebay for the pond. But I think we could orient a pipe pointed downstream more, if that would help.
Could you expand a little bit on, did they give a reason why they didn't want to go into that forebay? I know a neighbor had suggested that, that area already is, clearly wet bottomed and.
It had something to do with the design of this forebay and the way the water flows around it.
Okay.
They did not want us to disrupt that.
I also think it should be noted that the intention of stormwater management is any rainfall that occurs on this site isn't outletted at a faster pace or higher velocity than it was before. That's the intent of it. So the outlet of this pipe won't be any faster than what it currently is. And that's why it's engineered that way. So yeah, if you putting the pipe parallel to stream, yes, it would help, but it's not gonna be like a raging river after the development. That's why there is stormwater detention. That's how it's engineered.
I took a minute and I wrote something up. So when we discussed earlier about, you know, sort of a guarantee there would be trees along the trail, would you object to having something similar to this statement put into the requirements of the plating? Additionally, the developer will commit to plant additional oak trees or other recommended species, spaced 30 feet apart in any areas along the trail where, after grading, there are no viable trees over 6 inches in caliper within 20 feet from the edge of the trail. And then there was also the request by the neighboring developer where the cul-de-sac bulb for Windsor Parkway comes right up to the northern property line. That would be a very easy place to commit to for the north edge of that cul-de-sac. Again, maybe a suitable shade tree every 30 feet. I mean, it can't be that many around there. And perhaps some shrubs for the headlights. I know he's asking that we not grade, and if you cannot grade and leave a substantial tree, I'm sure that would be great, but I'm not sure that that's viable for that small a site. And so you have this little sliver where the bulb comes right up to the northern property line. You're not going to want people walking through those two property connections. You might consider a hedge of some native shrub like a viburnum, along with some shade trees. Maybe both of you then sort of become a little happier.
One thing I would like to point out is that because we're tied to the existing grades at the end of this stub and what we can do grade-wise with the cul-de-sac, we will be sitting higher than the neighboring property by a foot or two. So I think the best way to screen headlights would be to do a hedge or shrubs on our side around the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So
So if those items were put in there, you would be agreeable to those requests?
Along the northerly lot lines of 1 and 2.
Do you want to do the whole lot line? That's more than I asked.
No,
But I'm okay with it.
just around the bulb, that's what we're saying.
Okay.
But I will preface this with so buffers are the responsibility of the more intensive use. This would be the more intensive use. There was trees here prior to EPCON being developed. Yeah, I was there.
Right, but they've built first.
Yeah, that would be fine. I would be fine with that.
one thing I did just notice, we do have our PUE that comes around the edge of the cul-de-sac. So would
I'm
it
sorry,
be
what is it?
possible
What is
to?
it, Melissa? I didn't understand what you said.
There's a public utility easement for electric and gas that goes around the cul-de-sac bulb there, a 10-foot easement. I don't know if they're going to let us plant shrubs there. Could we plant it inside the right of way?
Between the curb and the sidewalk?
Yeah.
That seems maybe not so doable because of snow removal.
Well, this is going to be electric. Now that I said it, I don't think we can do shrubs through that electric easement.
We could do shrubs in a PUE.
Can we?
Yeah.
It's 10 feet.
If they
It's-
ever have to go and do a repair.
The homeowners that live there would be at risk if there needs to be repairs, correct?
Yeah.
I still want my trees too.
Yeah, that would be fun.
But you're on a roll. What about the 4 trees per lot?
Well, they're required to do 2 per lot, add 2 more. So you've got 15 lots? 14, 28 trees?
Times 2.
Well, you're required to do 2.
So in addition to your trees along the trail that you liked, we would do the shrubs and then we could double. I mean, it's, we
You
want
know, it's
trees.
interesting. Landscape is always the last thing, but it's actually not that expensive an ad and it does a lot. So,
Definitely adds to the appeal. I mean, it's called Timberwood Drive, like I pointed out. It's, we want trees.
And I would just, I think it's important that when you're talking about the areas where the trees need to be planted, it's really along Outlot Z and Lot 11. So I think I would just, no, it's 11. Isn't it 11 where they have the trees that are,
they already have some planned in there.
that's what I'm talking about, but making sure that those trees are of the right species. or
Oh,
whatever.
yes, I would recommend that some of that understory trees get changed to a recommended overstory tree for woodland areas. We have lists of recommended overstory trees.
One of the reasons why this is difficult is because the trail does get onto this particular property.
Yeah, Nick, if we were gonna list all the reasons why this project was difficult, we'd be here a long. We've only hit on a few of them. But that is certainly a complication.
Council, is there anything else that was raised in the comments from the residents that you think we need to have addressed?
I was kind of working, well, Rhonda was working on something, I was kind of working on something too, but I think she covered most of it, so. Just
Well, then maybe I would ask Clayton to come back up. So based on the conversation that was just had, what changes need to be made to the resolution?
Kind of working on it back there. I think we
Okay.
need to do some clarification in 5. Let me. Actually opened up just a moment. If I was hearing that there was a desire to clarify comment number 5, the alternative buffer applies to lots 10, 11, 12, and 14, that we would accept the 25-foot existing trees in that area, except the southeast 135 feet of lot 10. That'd be where that overland flowage easement exists. And any area where there is a gap or not within a tree buffer easement, the standard tree or trail easement would still apply. I believe that was I heard there. I heard agreement for installation of a hedge of shrubs along the north side of the cul-de-sac for Northwest Windsor Drive. I heard, I'm gonna look to Rhonda here to maybe help me. What was the trees along lots 1 and 2?
Along the trail or along the cul-de-sac?
The cul-de-sac for lot 1 and 2.
I think we said along the northern arc of the cul-de-sac that the developer agrees to plant a shade tree based on the recommended list that we have every 30 feet, and that they will plant a shrub hedge out of using a native shrub like viburnum
In the public utility easement.
in the in the,
Yeah, right along that north arc.
not the not the area between the sidewalk and the property line, but from the property line.
Yeah, that's the public utility easement.
Okay,
So the,
behind the sidewalk.
yeah, so the hedge, the shrubs would be there, and then was, just to make sure I'm understanding, the one tree for every 30 feet, was that the full length of 1 and 2, or was that also just the arc of
Pretty much it's the northern arc, you know.
northern arc? Okay.
I don't know that we need to be, we don't know where their driveway's gonna be. We can't, I don't want to have a
We're
tree
probably only
planted.
talking a few kind of on the northeast
Right.
and northwest,
talking
because you're not
about
doing
4 or
any
5
right
trees.
here.
Right.
Because I will point out, this is also where sanitary sewer goes to the north, so we don't want to be putting trees right over that, so.
They'll have to work it out.
Tracking you there, and the,
Instead of 2
Oh,
trees
yeah.
per lot, it's now 4 trees per lot.
and did we just want to extrapolate 2 shall be overstory deciduous or evergreen? Because right now it's 1 shall be, so I'll just double it essentially.
Yes.
Okay. That is what I heard. Did I miss anything?
Can you read the first part that you said that you wanted to do, that there was 125 feet by the outlot that we were not covering because
So they had trimmed that.
because it would be interfere with the overlying drainage? Is that
Yeah,
what
so
you're
the
saying?
67 plus 67 is 135 feet.
And there's not room between that and the trail?
I think there is plants of
Yeah,
the trail.
that's kind of what we're saying, is the
So was the-
18
oh,
feet from
that-
the edge
yeah.
of the trail to where the overland easement.
missed
If
that.
there's no trees in there, that they're committing to plant trees every 25 feet.
Yeah, that was the oak, and then I did miss the 1 tree every 30 if
25
there's.
Can't remember now.
We had originally
I
said
wrote,
25.
oh, okay, I said 30, when I spoke earlier, it was 30.
So basically, it starts at the point, the last 135 feet of lot 10, and then all through outlot Z.
And if there's already a tree in that area,
Right,
they don't have to add another one.
right. But if there's an area in
With
that,
gaps bigger than 30 feet, then they put a tree in.
a gap of no tree of 6 caliper inches.
It has to be over 6 inches in caliper.
And that
Not the new tree, right?
The old trees
existing.
that are existing
Okay.
have to be 6 inches in caliper or more.
I got
We're getting
that.
so specific here. This is,
I was panicking that you wanted them to plant 6-inch trees.
we haven't told them what size trees to plant. I was gonna say 2-inch caliper.
Our standard for open space plantings is 1.5 inch.
Sounds great. And deer proof.
All right, I believe I caught everything, so it was clarifying the buffer like I discussed, the 1 tree every 30 in the buffer, if no 6-inch present already, hedge along the north arc of Windsor, trees along the north arc of Windsor for 1 for every 30 feet, just kind of on that north arc, and 4 trees per lot in lieu of 2. Anything else?
I think the only thing I would add as well is, as going back to the, how the water flows out of the
Outflow.
the outflow, that it be redirected in a way that is parallel to the stream as much as possible, as opposed to at a 90-degree intersection of the creek.
All right, I added that one in as well. Anything else?
Council, anything else?
What I would maybe end with is just ask Christine that she's comfortable with all these amendments.
Whoever makes the motion to approve the resolution should say with the stated changes as discussed. And then Clayton can make those changes for the mayor's signature.
I mean, it is my entire side of my
I guess I don't, but,
Perhaps
Yeah.
address that into the mic so it can be on the recording.
Mary Beth Hagan, 5803 Northwest 90th.
so when you say your house faces, can you go to the screen and tell?
Yeah, if you can do it with the one with the pictures of the lots where the trees are growing with the photographs, yeah. This is our lot right here.
Okay,
And then Teresa's is 9,000 right here. My entire, every window in my house and my patio area all faces this way. There's a very large wooded lot line right here on this lot line. And if this is clear cut and raised all the way down and graded to just flat with no trees, it will pretty much eliminate the reason that I moved to Johnston as the place that I wanted to be and was so excited to spend my retirement years here.
so, but obviously they can't touch any of the trees or any of the buffer that is on your property. There's a 30-foot buffer,
Right.
so
And
they,
that's-
they aren't gonna touch that.
Well, and that's, I guess, my question is, Clayton talked today about taking down the privacy fence, which is simply a lot line divider fence. So I just want to make sure that everybody has an idea that we will try as hard as possible to leave any of those larger trees that are right there on that lot line, rather than raising trees all the way down if possible.
Well,
I
any,
was
any
hearing-
tree that is north of that red lot line,
Yeah, I certainly get that.
so, and there's,
But if something's on the lot line, what happens to that tree?
What I was hearing from discussion was the need to raise the cul-de-sac to match existing road grade would necessitate its removal because it would just be too much fill. So my understanding, and Melissa certainly, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is everything in that location would be needed to remove to install the cul-de-sac bulb.
Then what does that do to my
On,
lot?
on,
Do I then have a cliff on my lot line?
I believe it's
because
only
they're
about a
raising it?
foot.
It's a foot and a half maybe.
Okay, but then why would we need to take down every tree on the lot line? Well, I understand that, but I guess what I'm saying is, if you're saying you have to take down every tree on the lot line to make it a buildable lot, then that, and it's going to be a foot and a half, that means there's gonna be a foot and a half drop off on my lot line.
It's not gonna be a straight, it's gonna be a,
Well, then if it's gonna slope, could we leave the tree?
Well, but that's not your lot line. Your lot line is 30 feet north of that, right?
Okay, so it's Justin's lot line.
So, but what I'm saying though, and I want to be clear, the 30 feet between your lot and this property is tree, correct?
Correct.
Is there any?
Some of it is.
it's not planted yet.
Is there any additional plantings scheduled to occur between this lot and her house?
Yes.
Yes, so that is already going to occur. Justin is going to plant additional trees in addition to the trees that are already there. No trees are gonna be removed between that 30-foot.
So I think one aspect, back to that original ask, and I think that,
Rhonda, Martin.
Councilman Martin,
Yeah.
Councilmember Martin.
mentioned maybe doing same thing every 30 feet along that lot line after it's graded. That'd probably be, I don't know what that distance is, but it's probably about 200 feet, 7 trees, 8 trees.
Lot 2 is 201 feet, I see. Lot 1 is 225 feet.
I mean, yeah.
Hey, I can find with 4 trees. 2 on mine and 2 on hers.
Well, I thought that's kind of,
We're gonna have stuff in our buffer.
Yeah,
Just
so,
something in addition.
and honestly, your buffer is what's required by city code in addition to the existing trees that are there. I don't know if a few additional trees 30 foot apart will even matter because of the existing trees that are there.
And I guess that's my concern is, why do they have to leave the buffer with existing trees that are there? If you guys have a completely beautiful, 100% wooded lot, that of course you are loving because that's where you want to put your home. I don't blame you, it's gorgeous back there. I guess I just don't understand.
The higher intensity use is required to provide the buffer. So this is single family, your
So you're basically saying the lots that really not big enough to build houses on without taking every single tree down to put the house.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying in order to get the grading and the pavement in and have it engineered stormwater wise, the trees have to be.
So I'm hearing, I guess what I'm hearing is because of the infrastructure that has to go in, the trees have to be removed.
Because of the number of lots, right?
Well, let's,
In addition, we have to tie sewer in right there as well. So there's this public sanitary sewer easement out to the north that Justin brought to the south. And that's also required, and you have to dig a hole. So that's why trees get removed there. But I really do think it's a non-issue, and I'm not trying to downplay your issue, but the existing trees that are there, plus the existing trees Justin will plant, I don't think the additional trees on lot 1 and 2 will do any good. I think what's already there, in addition to what's going to be planted, I think that's sufficient.
If council's comfortable with Councilmember Martin's recommendation to have the few trees there along the north arc of Lot A, we can certainly work with the developer to make sure they're properly placed to provide the most benefit to the area. If that sounds agreeable.
So there'll be a hedge there and there'll also be,
4 or 5 trees.
right.
What is the plan for that?
What's that? I'm sorry.
The tree planting within that 30 foot, is it specific as far as how many trees in the spacing in the trees?
Yeah, there's a site plan drawn up,
Okay.
but we may try to change it up, like I said, make sure certain sight lines are dealt with and make sure that.
I did overlay your plan set with theirs, so that's what's up on the screen, showing what the landscape plantings from your site would be once installed as they relate to this site. So you are seeing new tree plantings and shrubs along the north edge of your property. Yeah, they just have yet to be installed.
So all of those trees and shrubs that you just highlighted will be, and that is that on, where is that in relationship to the 30-foot, that's all within the 30-foot buffer?
Yes,
And none of that's in place currently?
correct, to my knowledge, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so that is to be installed still. Correct me, the intent is with home construction completion, the intent, yep.
With completion of all the homes in the site plan, or how does?
Sometimes we do them in groupings, so like we have 3 of them that we're building on within 6 months, we'll kind of do that stretch.
And
I mean,
with,
At a point where,
What
you
we
know,
did in AT and West Des Moines was, they came out and inspected, they didn't give us our last 3 permits until city came out and made sure everything's good, so.
that's our standard
Well,
is,
and those two, obviously, you live in those homes today, they're existing, so,
She does. I
okay,
closed September 4th.
okay,
that one's finishing construction, that one is finished.
okay.
Counselor, is there anything more that we need Clayton to do?
Clayton, I'd like some clarification on your amendments that you've jotted down. Do we now have legal description of that conservation easement in that upper kind of corner or triangle of Lot 1?
I did not have that in here.
I also would like that noted in the resolution once it gets amended.
Tree conservation easement in northwest corner of Lot 1 for trees shown. All right,
And
yeah, you're referring
It's
to
consistent
this
with that
triangle,
size that's
right?
outlined there. You're not.
I'm not requesting that it be modified in any way other than what's as depicted there, just that it be,
Be labeled as a conservation
yep,
easement.
described.
All right, I got that in here, and you're referring to that triangle I'm kind of going over, correct?
That's correct.
All right, I have that added in here as well.
Anything else, Counsel?
Mayor, I have a motion.
Okay,
I move to table this issue so that we can see all of the amendments in writing, to be able to process them, to make sure that they reflect the intent of all of those present.
Motion has been made. Do we have a second? The motion fails for a lack of second. Do we have any other motions?
Mayor, I move approval, contingent on the specifications that we've discussed tonight about the additional landscaping, the redirection of the outlet flow, corrected wording on the easements.
All of the proposed changes
All of
as
the proposed
discussed.
changes.
I think, yes. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mayor. I find this motion premature. I feel it's disingenuous to the transparency of our entire process. We learned tonight that we had some kind of oversights or misstatements with regard to what the intent was. I know that staff will work very diligently to reflect in their wording all that was expressed. All I'm asking is that I would have had a chance to actually be able to read that and parse that. Instead, I have to go on recollection. I have to go on verbal type assurances. And quite frankly, that's not the way that this process works. With that being said, I will be voting no.
Councilmember Burkhardt, I don't intend to debate or argue with what you've just said, but the process that we have followed tonight is not unusual. It is something that we do on occasion when we have the kind of discussion that we had here tonight and the request for proposed changes. It's not unusual. And so I'm a little disappointed that you would call it disingenuous.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think whenever you're considering these types of things, and obviously we've been around here for a long time, and you get into kind of contemplating a proposed revision to the ordinance, to me, it's a little bit of a balance, right? And I think when people are kind of spitballing and there's not a consensus coming around an idea, then I think certainly tabling is appropriate. But the reason I didn't second your motion for a tabling is because I felt that there was a solid consensus around, and reasonable people can disagree, and clearly we do, but I think to argue that there's not a consensus among at least 3 votes of the council tonight on what Councilmember Martin described, I think is is incorrect. So that's why I didn't second your motion, and that's why I did second Councilmember Martin's motion.
I'd just like to also add before we vote on the motion that has been made and seconded, I appreciate the conversation that we've had tonight. I appreciate the fact that the residents have turned out, brought your concerns forward. It gave us an opportunity to understand better what those concerns were. I think most of us did listen to the P&Z recording, which was 2 hours long, but we listened to it and we learned from it, and I think it really added a lot of value to the discussion that we had here tonight as well. I want to say thank you to the developer and your entire team for being so willing to consider the proposed changes that were made tonight, as well as at the P&Z commission meeting. We don't always get that kind of cooperation. And I know that a lot of effort went into trying to address some of the concerns even earlier in the process. And so, I would just, encourage you to continue to have conversation with the neighborhood and as additional concerns arise, see if you can't work out something with the neighbors as well. I also want to say thank you to Clayton. You've been very patient through this process. You are very skilled in what you do, and you've had to field a lot of this along the way, and you've done it very professionally. So I just want to call you out tonight and thank you for your good work in this as well. So Is there anything else that the council members want to
And
add?
Mayor, and I apologize because you did a very nice job of putting a bow on this and really trying to get everybody on the same page. But I do want to answer the gentleman in the second row who had the question about the idea, the suggestion about converting it to parkland and making sure that we had seen that. And I know, I think several folks did see it. And the reason that I don't support that suggestion is not, there's no legal, you sort of said, is there legal issues, or, there's nothing legal about it, right? Basically, it comes down to, they own land, this land, right? And somebody, whether it would be residents who would say, we want to buy this land and keep it for ourselves to be used as it currently is, or the city comes and buys it. That's, all that comes down to would be, is there a willingness of two parties to come to an agreement on a transaction, right? So that's what would have to occur. And for the city to decide to do that, we are constantly thinking about where there is a need for parkland in our community. We have a capital improvement plan that we put together every year, update, and this is the investment that we're gonna make in parkland, new parks, improvements to trails for the next 5 years in the city. And so we don't, I don't know how much money it would cost to buy this land, or how much this gentleman would require to sell the land, but we don't have that money just sitting around unspent in our capital improvement plan. And so we try to take a pretty strategic approach to how we plan for parks, and look at areas of the city that are unparked and need parks in that area, and then kind of make funding decisions based on that. So that's why I read your suggestion and took it seriously, but that's why I didn't find it compelling. And so I wanted to make sure your point was answered, and knew that we did, at least from my perspective, I looked at it, and that's why I didn't want to go down that path, so. But I do hope that the change in the flow being more parallel will help alleviate some of your concerns, so. Yep.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 24-189 as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Burkhart,
No.
Pope,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion passed. Again, thank you all for coming this evening. We have one additional item under the consent agenda, or non-consent agenda, and that is item 7D. Consider approval of claims in the amount of $3,616,151.36.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Burkhart,
Yes.
Pope,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion passed. City Administrator, do you have any comments this evening?
I do, Mayor and Council. I just want to
Keep
take,
them short.
yes, absolutely. I just want to take a moment, and I'm pleased to announce that Dave Wilwerding has been selected as and has agreed to be our next Assistant City Administrator here. Dave has served over 20 years in various roles here at the city, so he's really well versed, and I think in a really good position to serve in that role. Dave will oversee community development, public works, and parks departments in this new role, and will also lead the development of our annual CIP. So I just would like to take this opportunity and please join me in welcoming Dave to this new position.
He'll do a great job for us.
I should add that Dave will assume that role starting August 4th, and we are starting the process to immediately fill that position. We also will be posting shortly the Parks Director position to fill that position. I'd like to now turn it over to Matt. He's going to make a few brief comments.
I'll keep it brief. We've got a public information meeting on 100th Street project. Be our first public information meeting, and that is from 70th north to the city limits, or the really the back door of Camp Dodge there at the end of 100th Street. It's from 5:30 to 6:30 this Thursday. It'll follow our normal format of a brief presentation, and then we'll have a breakout session for the residents to have any property specific questions. On the lake front, we crested over the weekend, Saylorville crested over the weekend It is starting to go down. We're about a foot lower than what we crested at over the weekend, at about 878. And it looks like they're going to start drawing back later this week. They'll start lowering the outflow of the lake as well. So it was able to hold back the floodwaters. It really crested about 4 feet below the emergency spillway. So that was good news for us. And then one last update on 100th Street, south of 62nd. If you've been by that project today, they rocked the entire grade from 62nd up to just short of White Oak, and in anticipation to pave on Wednesday the rest of the southbound lane from essentially Century Way to White Oak. And then next week, they have 2 pours scheduled on the northbound lanes from 62nd all the way to White Oak on the 23rd and 25th if the weather holds. So we'll be seeing a lot more pavement go down, and then they'll drop back and start to fill in the driveways and the connections there. So we'll see a lot of movement on that over the next couple of weeks with, school starting here towards the end of August. We need to get that intersection completed. So just a brief update there. Thank you.
Anything else from staff?
Nothing else this evening.
Councilwoman Martin,
I have nothing.
Councilman Burkhart.
Thanks. And I won't be brief. I'll take my time. I'm upset. And I'm not upset because I voted against some other motion. I recall several occasions where I tried to offer up other amendments and got my hand slapped because that's not the protocol that we use to do it. We discuss them in committee before we bring them printed and typed. We had a mass of folks, all with different interests. I am so appreciative of the developer, the builder, the engineer, to try to come up with as many solutions as they could on the spot tonight. That's amazing. I was appreciative of the entire process throughout this, that neighbors came together to try to discuss and better understand. I appreciate our city staff fielding my questions repeatedly, as well as those of other council members, as well as many of the neighbors. To postpone a vote, of which I am in full support, so that we could actually see it in writing and get it right, to make sure that our trail and the tree species and that the other things like that are right, failed, concerns me. I'm sorry you felt that I used a poor choice in words. But the reality is, out of fairness to our citizens, we should make sure that they all understood. And to make sure that they all understood so that to some extent that they could bring any other concerns that we may have overlooked in this process. I understand we have means and need to move forward with these types of developments, and I really am not trying to hold them up. I'm trying to do things right. I think that's what they want, especially if that landowner is going to live in this neighborhood as well. And waiting 2 weeks to make sure that we could see that writing and perfect it wouldn't have hurt anyone. I don't appreciate being called out at the dais because you disagree with me. The reality is we need to be civil. We need to be civil throughout society right now, not just in this dais. And we need to take time to lower the temperature to come to that common understanding, not to rush something through just on verbal. I yield.
Councilman Cope.
A couple of things. One, as I think a lot of us had an opportunity to listen to the P&Z meeting and discussion on this item, I want to just sort of, and I would ask our community development staff to please pass along my appreciation, and I'm sure the other appreciation for the work that the P&Z does on behalf of the city and the work that they did on this case, but others as well. It's a really hard job. They often have to address those concerns that residents have, and they're the kind of that first shot of hearing it. And I just thought the P&Z discussion of this item was really helpful for the process, and I just wanted to kind of pass along my appreciation for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Second of all, I had a chance last week city staff hosted a meeting with the Country Ridge neighborhood to talk about a stormwater project. And the topic was very similar about potential with having to do stormwater tree removal. And I just want to call out the staff that were present, Dave Wilberding and also Matt Greiner, as well as the folks from Bolton and Meek. I thought they did a really, really good job of listening to the feedback of residents in that area, and trying to, and kind of explain to them the process. It's kind of interesting. You have a lot of folks who sort of say, well, they did something 15 years ago and didn't listen, right? Well, that's not how we do things, right, anymore. We have these meetings to get input and feedback. And so I just wanted to share that I really appreciated that, because I think that gets that process going to get us to design that project in the right way. It's a public project, Councilman Burkhardt, so it's a little bit different than this here, a little bit different balance. So, I just wanted to highlight that. I thought that was really nicely well done by staff and our engineer on that project. So just appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Councilman Evans.
I'm not gonna be brief either.
Okay.
Just saying. No, in that last case we just heard, where the one street comes in and stops, and now we're putting a cul-de-sac there, that just blows my mind. And I understand that our hands are tied, and I was probably here when we tied them. But that, man, somehow we can think of a way to get beyond that. And I understand it's private property versus the developer's property, the townhomes or whatever is private property.
And Jim, I'm sorry for interrupting, but the reason that when we talked about that, because the comprehensive plan originally had the road going through there, right? And the residents felt strongly, and I agreed with them, that if you have a road coming, one of those two cul-de-sacs would have connected all the way to Windsor Drive. They were very concerned that all that traffic that was going to Jimmy John's and to Jethro's, and if they wanted to go west, they would drive through their neighborhood to get out. That's why they wanted a cul-de-sac there. And we voted as a council, and everyone here as a council was on the council at that time and said, there should not be a connecting road in there. So we made that decision to do that cul-de-sac, to make those cul-de-sacs, because I think appropriately that a connecting road wasn't the right decision. Even though the comp plan called for a connecting road, and that's not easy. I think anytime there's something in the comp plan and you kind of go against that, but to me, I feel really strongly that I think cul-de-sacs are appropriate in that situation. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but that's just the backstory on that. So.
And then I want to congratulate Dave. And in 6 months, I just want to be careful what you wish for. And then also congratulate Chief, Police Chief, for sticking with us a little longer.
We had a very nice dedication of our art shelter, the Dart Art Shelter this afternoon. I thought that was very nice. We slipped it in right ahead of the storm, so it was brief, but it was nice, and it's a beautiful shelter. But other than that,
Speak about the kayak launch at all. I'm not trying to plant it, but
meeting.
Just that presentation. The kayak.
Dave, do you want to comment on the kayak launch?
I'm sorry, Mayor, but
we did have a open house for the water trail access at Merle Hay on Thursday of last week. The mayor and Councilmember Burkhardt were there. We had a really nice turnout, heavily consisting of paddlers, I think was the consensus.
And paddlers that have been on Beaver Creek this
That have
year,
been on
so,
Beaver Creek,
yeah.
that use it, that are, I would say, hands away consensus was all positive comments, a lot of excitement. So we're continuing to move forward through that design process.
Thank you, Dave, for spearheading that for us. I have nothing more to add. Does anybody else have something for the good of the order? If not, we are adjourned.
Mayor, I didn't mean to put you on the spot with regard to the kayaks, but was so well
It was.